Before we begin to go on this adventure together, comment where you are from, since we have people from all over the world watching. When my daughter said I wasn't expected for Christmas, I didn't ask why. I didn't beg. I just looked at her standing in the doorway of the house I helped her buy and said, "Understood." Then I walked back to my truck, turned the engine on, and by the time I reached the stop sign at the end of her street, I'd already called the bank. The mortgage payments were made, finished. And that was just the beginning of my plan. Justice must be restored, and arrogance is punished. You won't believe what I did next. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know in the comments. The snow hadn't stuck yet, but the air in Anchorage that morning felt sharp enough to cut bone. I'd driven the old Silverado down from Palmer, 42 miles each way, because Jenna had asked if I could help hang lights around the garage for the kids. "Just need a ladder and your steady hands," she joked on the phone 3 nights ago. I hadn't missed a Christmas with my daughter since Desert Storm. Not when I was stationed in Germany. Not when her mother passed. Not when I had a shattered left hip from a training accident and needed a cane just to reach the porch. But that morning, standing beside her neatly trimmed hedges and holiday inflatables, she didn't even offer me coffee. "I'm going to say this straight, Dad," Jenna began, shifting awkwardly on the threshold, her hands tucked deep into her jacket like she didn't want to be part of this conversation. "This year, you're not expected for Christmas." Expected. That word rang louder than it should have. It wasn't "you're not invited." It wasn't even "please understand." It was a logistical memo, like I was some retired contractor whose presence was no longer required. I looked past her. Her husband, Marcus, moved through the kitchen behind her. He didn't look up. A roast in the oven. Kids' drawings on the fridge. My granddaughter's boots by the fireplace, the same boots I'd ordered from a tactical gear site because she said she wanted to be like Grandpa. I kept my voice level. "Something I said." Jenna sighed. "It's not about you, Dad. Marcus's parents are flying in from Seattle this year, and they have traditions." "Traditions?" I nodded slowly. "Right. Look, maybe we can do something the day after, brunch or whatever." Brunch. I hadn't driven through black ice and packed that damn ladder for brunch. But I smiled anyway, the way a soldier does when he's out-tranked but not out-thought. "Understood," I said, then turned around. By the time I hit the freeway ramp, the windshield fog had cleared, but something colder had settled behind my rib cage. I drove in silence, except for the soft hum of the heater, and the memory of Jenna's voice telling me I didn't fit this year's program. I'd co-signed the mortgage on that house 4 years ago. She and Marcus were barely making rent in a 2-bedroom duplex when she called, voice cracking. "Dad, I got an opportunity for a VA-backed loan, but my credit still shot from the hospital bills. Can you help?" I didn't hesitate. I didn't ask questions. I'd helped them land a 3.5% rate, fronted $30,000 from my military pension fund for the down payment. And since then, I'd been covering $1,875 a month, automatically deducted from my account like clockwork. My VA benefits went in, their house came out. Because that's what fathers do. Because I believed in building something they could stand on. They'd built just high enough to forget who laid the foundation. I parked back home, a modest 2-bedroom near the edge of Wasilla. The paint was peeling. The roof needed patching. I hadn't updated the carpet since 2003. Inside, I hung up my jacket and sat at the kitchen table. My old army duffel still in the corner from Thanksgiving weekend. I hadn't even unpacked. I looked at the picture on the fridge, Jenna in her graduation cap, grinning ear to ear. Maria, her mother, holding her diploma like it was gold, and me standing beside them, still in uniform. We looked like a family in that photo. I reached for my folder, paperwork I hadn't touched in months. Mortgage records, transfer statements, loan agreements, the things no one wants to look at unless something breaks. Well, something had. 11:42 a.m. I called the bank. A woman answered with a trained warmth. "Mr. Carlyle, how can we help you today?" "I need to cancel a standing payment," I said. "Certainly. May I have the account number?" I read it off without pause. My army training taught me that numbers are life. Recurring mortgage payment to Wells Fargo, $1,875 monthly. Is that correct? That's the one. And would you like this paused or cancelled entirely? I looked out the window. Snow was falling now, slow, methodical, like someone shaking a blanket over the valley. Cancelled. Effective immediately. A pause on her end. Understood. That's been processed. Is there anything else we can do for you? I shook my head. No, That's everything. I hung up and sat still, listening to the quiet hum of the refrigerator. For the first time in 4 years, my monthly budget would balance. For the first time since Maria passed, I could maybe fix the water heater, buy new tires, refill the propane tank without stress. For the first time, I felt like I'd stopped bleeding. It wasn't revenge. Not yet. But it was something cleaner, like the first deep breath after a deployment. They didn't expect me for Christmas. Fine. But they should have known, you don't exclude a man who built your home and expect the walls to stand forever. I didn't eat dinner that night. Not because I was sad or punishing myself, I just didn't feel like chewing. Instead, I poured a cup of black coffee, let it go lukewarm on the table, and stared at the manila folder I hadn't touched in over a year. Inside, in perfect military order, were 5 years of documents, bank statements, mortgage transfers, and the co-signed deed. Everything Jenna and Marcus never mentioned anymore. Everything I never brought up because fathers don't keep score. Not until they're made to. I pulled out a yellow legal pad and started writing dates. March 17th, down payment wired. April 3rd, first automatic withdrawal. July 10th, roof repair paid in full after hail damage. October, $600 for their heating bill when the furnace broke. December, the first Christmas after Maria passed, the one where Marcus had quietly confided they couldn't afford a tree. I'd driven through a snowstorm to bring them one from my front room. Jenna had said, "We'll never forget this, Dad." She had. At 6:15 the next morning, I woke up the way I had for 30 years, no alarm, no hesitation. The army trains you to start your day before the world even breathes. I pulled on my flannel, boiled water for coffee, and opened my back door. Snow had coated the steps, maybe an inch or two overnight. Light, quiet snow, the kind that erases footprints and makes everything look fresh. But I hadn't forgotten where I'd stood the day before, in front of a house I'd helped purchase, told with corporate politeness that my presence would be inconvenient. The coffee finished brewing, I didn't drink it. Instead, I took out my phone and opened my texts. There it was, a message from Marcus, sent at 9:43 p.m. the night before. Jenna said you cancelled the mortgage transfer. I'm assuming this is temporary. Can we talk? No hi, Dad. No apology, not even my name. Just a subject line, transfer. It was like a glitch in the system. I stared at the screen for a long time before typing, "Let's." Jenna called that afternoon. I let it ring twice before picking up. "Dad, Marcus told me what you did." I waited. "You cancelled the house payments." Still waited. "I just..." She exhaled. I thought maybe this was a mistake or a warning. "No, Jenna." It was a correction. She fell silent. "I've been paying your mortgage, your furnace, your furniture, and your kids' private school uniform fees for 4 years. You told me I wasn't expected for Christmas. That's fine. But from now on, I'm also not expected to subsidize your life. Dad, you know we're in a tight spot. You've been in a tight spot for a decade. That's not fair." "No, Jenna. What's not fair is taking money from a man you no longer want at your table." The silence that followed was thick. I could hear the shame bleeding through the phone, or maybe just resentment. "I didn't want this to become a fight," she said finally. "It's not a fight," I replied. "A fight would require us to be on the same battlefield. Right now, you're in a house I paid for. I'm sitting in a cold kitchen eating off cracked plates. Marcus's parents just have higher expectations. That's all. They're refined people." That word again, refined. As if I'd just walked out of the jungle and tracked snow into their art gallery. I ended the call without saying goodbye. Later that night, I walked into my garage and pulled the top off an old footlocker I hadn't opened in years. It was the same one I carried through Kuwait and Bosnia and Fort Bragg. Inside, my old uniform, a pair of dog tags, and a battered green notebook I'd kept during deployments. I flipped through the pages, half in code, half in memories. What to pack, what to watch for, how to track movements when your enemy wears a smile. I'd been a soldier for 22 years. And for the past 10, I'd tried to forget that part of me. I traded battle plans for birthday cards, combat boots for slippers. But yesterday reminded me of something. A good soldier doesn't just fight. He studies. He prepares. And when the time comes, he moves with precision. I closed the footlocker. Tomorrow, I'd start documenting everything and digging deeper. By Friday, I had 3 folders open across the table. Folder 1, financial evidence, receipts, monthly withdrawals, repairs, check images, and Amazon orders that they had shipped to my address because their card had declined. I had nearly $94,000 in printed proof of the life I'd paid for. Folder 2, screenshots. Facebook posts, grateful to be hosting this year. Our home feels magical during the holidays. Instagram photos, Jenna posting wine glasses on the kitchen island I installed. Caption, Christmas Eve at the Harlow's # blessed life. But here's where I added my own twist. I didn't stop at social media. Using my old military contacts, I ran a quiet background check on Marcus. Turns out, he wasn't just a mid-level manager, he'd been quietly siphoning small amounts from a side business account, nothing illegal enough for charges, but enough to explain why their tight spot never ended. Printouts of public records and anonymous tips filled the folder. Folder 3, voice notes. I started recording myself at night, small memories, dates, like an audio log of the ways I'd been erased. But I went further. I recorded a call with an old army buddy who confirmed Marcus's shady dealings from a shared professional network. I didn't know yet how I'd use these, but I knew this: if they wanted to erase me from their story, they'd have to fight harder, and I'd make sure the battlefield was leveled with facts they couldn't ignore. On Sunday afternoon, Marcus called, not text, a real call. I almost didn't answer. Dennis, he began, voice bright and brittle like glass under pressure. I think there's been a misunderstanding. Is that so? I think emotions got heightened, and you overreacted a little. That word, overreacted. I leaned against my kitchen counter. Marcus, what part of this is confusing for you? Well, he faltered. You're punishing Jenna and the kids, and yourself. I'm correcting an imbalance, I said. But the kids love you. This doesn't have to change everything, does it? A beat of silence, then the dagger, you're acting unstable, Dennis. There it was. They couldn't control the money anymore, so they'd attack the man. Let me be very clear, I said, my voice so even it felt unfamiliar. I'm done funding people who treat me like a burden. That's not what this is about. No? Then what is it about? He didn't answer. Tell your parents I won't be picking them up from the airport this year, or any year. I hung up. Then, for the first time in 5 years, I opened the good bottle of scotch I'd been saving since Maria's funeral. I poured 2 fingers, toasted her photo on the mantel, and whispered, I'm back on mission. By Tuesday morning, the gloves were off. I woke to 6 missed calls and a voicemail from an unfamiliar number. A woman's voice, clipped and polite, Mr. Carlyle, my name is Dana Withers. I'm a journalist with the Anchorage Sentinel. I was hoping to speak with you regarding a story we're preparing on elder isolation and abandonment during the holidays. Your name was mentioned. Mentioned by whom? I didn't need to ask. They were escalating, and they were sloppy. I called her back. Not because I wanted to clarify anything, but because soldiers don't ignore intelligence. You gather it, assess the terrain, and move accordingly. Dana sounded younger than I expected, mid-30s, maybe. Sharp, measured. Thank you for calling me back, Mr. Carlyle. Just Dennis. Dennis, I want to be respectful of your time. I received a pitch from someone in your extended family, a woman named Elaine Harlow, Marcus's mother. Of course. She shared concern that you may have been experiencing cognitive decline, that perhaps recent decisions regarding family support and property arrangements were made under stress or emotional duress. She provided me with a copy of a cancelled mortgage transfer and a few emails. Emails? My jaw tightened. Is this a profile piece or an ambush? A pause. To be honest, it started as one, but I've done some digging, and I have a few questions. I let her ask them, and I answered plainly, 30 years of service, no debt, no criminal record, and yes, I'd cancelled the mortgage transfers I'd voluntarily covered for nearly 5 years. She didn't speak for a moment. Finally, she said, would you be willing to provide documentation to support that timeline? I smiled for the first time in days. I already have a folder prepared, and more. I met her that afternoon. Neutral location, a coffee shop downtown. I wore my pressed flannel, jeans, and a clean shave, not to impress, but to look exactly like what I was, sane, clear-eyed, dangerous if pushed. She flipped through the folder slowly, I scanning the highlighter marks, the printed bank statements, the photos of their house I'd taken from the street that morning. Then I handed her the twist, the background on Marcus's financial fiddling. Did you co-sign the house? She asked, looking up. Yes, and they still told you not to come for Christmas. They didn't tell me not to come, I said. They said I wasn't expected. She winced. That's worse. By Thursday, the story broke. Not front page, not yet, but page 7 of the Sentinel's lifestyle section, with the headline, The Forgotten Pillar, One Veteran's Silent Holiday Exile. It wasn't a hit piece. It was factual, almost reverent, and it included the subtle twist about Marcus's questionable business practices, framed as alleged irregularities that may have contributed to ongoing financial dependencies. The photo showed me in profile, sitting at my kitchen table, coffee in hand. I'd asked her not to use the ones with Maria's photo in the frame. She honored that. The article didn't name Jenna or Marcus outright, but anyone in Anchorage with a Facebook account could connect the dots. The comment section blew up by lunchtime. God bless this man. My dad went through the same thing. Jenna Harlow still posting about their humble holiday while living in a house funded by her father? Yikes. This generation needs to learn respect and honesty in their dealings. At 4:12 p.m., Jenna called. I let it go to voicemail. Then Marcus, then Elaine, then another number, blocked. Finally, I picked up. Dennis, this is Victor Harlow, Marcus's father, the investor, the orchestrator. Victor, I said calmly. To what do I owe the honor? You need to retract that article. I didn't write it. You gave her the information. I gave her the truth. He inhaled sharp and slow. You're embarrassing my family. Then maybe your family should try less embarrassing behavior. This will have consequences. I laughed, a short, humorless sound. You're talking to a man who watched a convoy burn in Fallujah. You think I'm afraid of gossip in Anchorage? You're playing a dangerous game, old man. I leaned back in my chair. No, Victor. I'm just finally keeping score. That night, I drove by their house again. Not to stalk, not to intimidate, just to look. The lights were off. The yard, usually over-decorated with inflatable reindeer and fake snowmen, was bare. And the for sale sign out front knew they were running scared. At 10:34 p.m., another email landed from Jenna. Subject, I'm sorry. Body, I don't know how we got here. I know I failed you. Please, can we talk? I miss you. So do the kids. There was an attachment, a photo of me holding Lily, my granddaughter at age 3, wearing my old army cap sideways on her little head. Underneath it, in shaky handwriting, I love you, Grandpa. Merry Christmas. I stared at that image for a long time. Then I did something I hadn't done in years. I cried quietly. No noise, no shaking shoulders, just 2 tears. One for the girl I raised, one for the woman she became. The next morning, I printed the photo, framed it, put it on my mantel beside Maria's. I didn't call Jenna back. Not yet. Let her sit in the silence she built. December 24th, 6:41 p.m. Anchorage was wrapped in silence, the kind that only comes when snow falls slow and clean over everything you've built and everything you've lost. I stood across the street from their house, engine off, lights dimmed. Jenna had gone all out this year, golden lights traced every gutter, wreaths on both windows, glowing reindeer flanking the walkway like guards at a private palace. I watched silhouettes move behind the curtains. Guests in dress coats, wine glasses in hand. Laughter spilled faintly through the frost-lined windows. A Christmas dinner, 12 guests. Their curated life on full display. And not one of them knew who had paid for every inch of it, until tonight. The briefcase on my passenger seat held 12 identical packets, each one neatly organized, printed bank statements, photos of renovation receipts in my name, a copy of the article from the Sentinel annotated in red, social media screenshots, including Jenna's post just 2 days ago, feeling grateful this Christmas. Everything we have, we earned together. A lie so well polished it gleamed. And, as my twist, a single page on Marcus's financial discrepancies, public records only, but enough to raise eyebrows. I stepped out of the truck, adjusted the collar of my navy peacoat, and walked toward the house I'd financed but never been welcomed into. They left the door unlocked. Of course they did. Safe neighborhoods don't expect intrusions from the man who built them. I let myself in. The warmth hit first, heat and cinnamon sugar and wine. Then the hush, the exact moment a room full of people senses something shift. 12 faces turned. Some curious, some confused. A few, like Jenna and Marcus, went completely white. Dennis? Jenna's voice was shrill. What are you doing here? Marcus rose from the dining table, napkin still in his lap. Dad! I held up one hand, not to silence them, to let them know I wasn't here for chaos. I was here for clarity. I won't stay long, I said. But since I wasn't expected for dinner, I figured I'd at least drop off a few gifts. I moved around the table slowly, placing a packet in front of each guest. Marcus's mother reached for hers with trembling fingers. Elaine Harlow, head of the local charity board, champion of etiquette and control. She read the top line of the statement and blinked like she'd been slapped. Jenna made a noise, a small, sharp gasp. You came here to humiliate us. No, I said quietly. I came here to correct the record. One of the men at the table, mid-50s, heavy blazer, gold cufflinks, cleared his throat. These documents say you paid the mortgage for this house every month for 4 years. I nodded. Plus the down payment, renovations, kitchen appliances, the granite countertops you're eating off of. My visa. Another guest, wait, you're the one from that article. And this page about financial irregularities. I turned toward him. Yes, sir. I am. Silence stretched long and uncomfortable. Elaine broke first. This is wildly inappropriate. You're disrupting a family gathering. I smiled slightly. That's interesting, considering I was told I wasn't family anymore. Jenna stood up now, flustered. We didn't ask you for all that. You offered. You wanted to help. Correct, I said. I offered because I believed family took care of each other. I paid month after month because I trusted that one day I'd be allowed a seat at this table again. My voice never rose, but the weight of it shifted the room. I was wrong. Someone at the far end whispered, Jesus Christ. Marcus looked like he wanted the floor to swallow him whole. I turned to him. I'm not angry at you, I said. I'm disappointed. You're my son-in-law. You had a father-in-law who would have given you everything, and did. And you traded that for candlelight and white linen with people who never lifted a finger for you. He opened his mouth, closed it again. Jenna was shaking now. You're ruining our reputation. No, I cut in. You ruined it when you lied to every person at this table. When you let them believe this house, this lifestyle, this performance was yours, and hid the cracks in your own foundation. A younger woman near the end, brunette, soft-spoken, finally spoke. I thought you were a consultant, Marcus. You never mentioned your father-in-law paid for all this, or these, discrepancies. Marcus's shoulders collapsed. Because he's ashamed, I said simply. Ashamed that the man he shut out was also the man who kept the lights on. Elaine stood now, face hard as granite. Dennis, if you don't leave, I'll be forced to involve, what? I asked. Police? Press. The Sentinel already ran the story, Elaine, and next week, they're running the follow-up with names. Her mouth clamped shut. Across the table, I saw something I hadn't expected. A guest, maybe a neighbor, reached out and closed his packet, then looked directly at me and said, "Thank you for your service, sir." That was enough. I stepped back, picked up my empty briefcase, and turned toward the front door. "I won't be seeing you again," I said over my shoulder. "But I hope one day you'll see yourselves." The last thing I heard before the door clicked shut was Jenna bursting into tears. The second to last, a man's voice near the window muttering, "They're going to lose everything, and maybe more if those financial claims hold up." I walked back to my truck, slow and steady. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel cruel. I felt finished, not with my daughter, not with my past, but with the role they assigned me, the invisible benefactor, the quiet ATM. I'd removed the mask. Now they had to sit in the mirror. That night, I lit a fire in the old stove and poured another glass of the good scotch. I sat by the window, watching the snow begin to fall again. Peaceful, silent, deserved. 3 days passed. Not a single call answered. Not one voicemail returned. The silence wasn't out of spite, it was discipline. The same kind of stillness I'd learned years ago, the kind that comes after a clean shot, when you wait for the dust to settle and the truth to echo through what's left. On the third morning, I found a certified envelope wedged in my mailbox, rubber-banded to my screen door. Notice of default. Amount past due, $11,250. Lender, Wells Fargo Mortgage Division. Action required within 14 days to avoid foreclosure proceedings. I read it slowly, twice, then again, just to be sure I hadn't misread the numbers. 3 months of unpaid mortgage. The same payments I'd once covered automatically, without thanks, without reminder. Now they were overdue, and nobody was coming to save them. I placed the envelope on the counter. Didn't open it further. Didn't gloat. Just poured myself a second cup of coffee, sat by the window, and listened to the heater click to life. The air in my home, though old and drafty, felt lighter, warmer, like it finally belonged to me again. At 6:08 p.m. that evening, I heard the knock. Not a tap, not a polite announcement, a knock like someone unsure of their place on the porch. I opened the door. Jenna stood there, wind-chapped cheeks, circles under her eyes, a woman 10 years older than she'd looked at Christmas. "Dad," she said. I stepped aside, said nothing. She walked in, looking around like she was entering a church for the first time in years, noticing the repaired cabinet door, the newly oiled floorboards, the quiet. "This place looks good," she said. "It's what happens when you stop giving your paycheck to people who don't respect you." She winced. We sat in silence, not the awkward kind, the real kind. The kind that carries weight. "I saw the letter," she said finally. "It's bad." I nodded. "We've fallen behind." I raised an eyebrow. She caught herself. "I mean, I did. I just didn't want to see it." I let her talk. "It's foreclosure now. Marcus has been a mess. His parents left early. Elaine won't even speak to him." "Smart woman," I muttered. "Dad, I know you're angry. I know you feel, I don't feel anything," I said. "Not anymore." That landed harder than if I'd shouted. Jenna reached into her jacket and pulled out a folded sheet of paper. "I did something," she said. I took the paper. Her handwriting was messy, but the math was clean, $226,875. Down payment, mortgage, repairs, utilities, school supplies, Christmases. You kept track of all this? I asked. She shook her head. I didn't, but I remembered where to look. Your old emails, the bank deposits. I pieced it together. I set the paper down. You missed a few. She nodded. I figured. But it's enough to see it. She looked at me then, really looked. I chose them over you, and they're gone or turning on us. And I'm standing here wondering how I ever let it get this far. I stayed silent. Marcus keeps saying, we need you to bail us out. That's your family. That's your duty. And I finally said, no, that caught my attention. She continued, I told him the man who paid our bills for 5 years without complaint didn't owe us a damn thing. That maybe we owed him everything. I leaned back in my chair. And what did he say to that? He stormed out. Then packed a bag. Another silence, this one different. She wasn't here for money. She was here for something else. Dad, she said softly. Do you think we'll ever be okay again? I took a long breath, then walked to the mantel, picked up the photo of Maria, then the picture of Lily, the one with my army cap on her head. We're not going back, I said. But we might go forward. She looked up. If you want a relationship, I continued, you'll have to build it brick by brick. Not with money, with respect, with presence, with truth. She nodded, eyes wet. And the mortgage, she asked quietly. Not my problem, I said. But maybe now, finally, you'll figure out how to solve it yourself. When she left, I stood on the porch and watched her walk to her car. No hugging, no false goodbyes. But halfway down the driveway, she turned and said, Dad, I was proud of you. The way you stood up for yourself. I didn't say anything. But I nodded. That was enough. Inside, I turned off the porch light, sat by the fire, and for the first time in years, I allowed myself to believe this wasn't revenge. It was a rescue from a life where I'd traded my worth for silence, and from a daughter who finally was learning what a father looks like. The call came just before 10 p.m. I let it ring 4 times, not out of hesitation, out of intention. Let him wait. Let him wonder. Then I picked up. Dennis. His voice was breathless, forced, like he'd rehearsed sincerity in front of a mirror. I didn't know who else to call. I said nothing. I don't even know where to start. I still said nothing. Finally, he filled the silence himself. The house is under review for foreclosure. Jenna says you won't help. She says you're done. Still nothing. I just think we need to sit down, talk this through, for the kids. The kids? The phrase dangled like a prop, something to lean on when everything else collapsed. I took a breath, calm, steady. Marcus, I said. There's nothing to talk through. He jumped in, you don't understand. I understand perfectly. You're being dramatic. You said my food was too spicy. My conversation was too simple. That I wasn't fit to sit at your holiday table. That was a misunderstanding. No, Marcus, I said. That was clarity. Yours? He faltered for a moment, then shifted tone. Okay, he said. Fine. Maybe things were said. But that doesn't undo years of support, or family. The kids think the world of you. Are you going to throw that away? My grip tightened on the phone. I'm not throwing anything away. I'm just done carrying what was never mine to carry. You're punishing us. No, I said flatly. I'm protecting what I have left. A long pause. Then came the pivot, his voice turned cold. Well, he said, you should know Elaine, and I have spoken to an attorney. He thinks we may have grounds to argue that the mortgage payments were a form of implied gift or support, that you were willingly contributing as a legal party. I almost laughed. You're threatening to sue me? I asked. I'm informing you, he said, rehearse now. That if this becomes a matter of legal action, your presence in our finances may not look as distant as you think, especially with those irregularities you dug up. I stood up from the kitchen chair, walked to the cabinet, opened a drawer, pulled out a thin envelope, one I'd prepared days ago. Marcus, I said, would you like the name of my attorney? Silence. Because he's expecting a call, and he has copies of every transfer, every receipt, every tax return proving the house was never in my name, that I was never legally liable. He swallowed, I could hear it through the line. He also has a statement I prepared, I continued, in case this got ugly. A timeline of emotional manipulation, public exclusion, financial abuse, and those irregularities. They are not just allegations anymore. I have emails from your former partner confirming the siphoning. You're bluffing. I paused, then said calmly, do I sound like a man who bluffs? More silence. Then his voice softened, that same syrupy tone he'd used years ago when asking for money just this once. Dennis, he said. I didn't mean for this to go this far. It went as far as you pushed it. He sighed. I'm scared. We might lose the house. I lost my wife, I said. I know. No, you don't. He didn't reply. I lowered my voice, cold, precise. You lost a house. I lost dignity. Time. Years of being spoken to like I was the hired help. And now you want empathy. Another beat. Then I delivered the final line, Marcus, I'm not angry with you anymore, but I will never trust you again. And I will never pay for your comfort at the cost of my self-respect. Then I hung up. I sat back down, hand steady. The war was over. There would be no lawsuits, no more threats. Because people like Marcus fight for appearances, not truth. And the truth, it doesn't flinch. That night, I opened the old army box again. Inside, I found my commendation medal, dusty but still gleaming. I held it in my hand, thinking not about service or sacrifice, but about clarity. That's what this had been, not vengeance, but clarity wrapped in consequences, and a twist of hidden truths brought to light. The letter arrived on a Thursday afternoon. No return address, just my name in blocky handwriting across the envelope, the kind of penmanship that doesn't yet know shame, that doesn't curve or pretend, it just speaks. I opened it carefully. Inside was a folded sheet of notebook paper torn from a school pad. At the top, in blue crayon, was a drawing, a man in a green jacket standing beside a truck. Next to him, a girl, arms wide open. Above them, 3 words written in lopsided capitals, me and Grandpa. Underneath was a short message, I miss you. Thank you for my boots. I wore them to school. People said I looked strong. Merry Christmas, Lily. I sat with that letter in my hands for a long time, longer than I've ever sat with any battlefield commendation, any promotion certificate, any bank deposit. This wasn't a plea or a guilt trip. It was a message from a girl who still remembered where strength comes from. And it hit me hard and clean. Marcus could manipulate. Jenna could disappoint. But Lily remembered. and that meant not everything was lost. I walked to my office, found a clean envelope, and wrote back, "Dear Lily, thank you for your letter." I got it on a snowy Thursday, and it made the whole house feel warmer. I still have the photo of us on the mantel, the one where you wore my army hat sideways and said you were going to be a general. You look the part. Take care of your boots, clean them after it rains, and walk tall in them. Merry Christmas, soldier. Grandpa Dennis. I didn't tell her about the foreclosure or about her mother's calls or the silence growing between me and her parents like a canyon neither of us wanted to name. Because she didn't need that. She just needed to know that her roots hadn't rotted. That somewhere behind all the adult noise, she still had someone steady. 3 days later, another envelope arrived. Inside was a photograph, Lily standing next to a snowman, boots laced high. She was saluting, sloppily, proudly, like someone who had seen the gesture done and hadn't yet learned to be embarrassed by it. Behind her, taped to the side of the house, was a hand-painted sign, "Grandpa built this house." I choked on nothing, just air and memory. Later that night, I sat on the porch. The cold didn't bite like it used to. Something had shifted. The war was done. The cleanup had started. And from the wreckage, a new signal was rising, not of retribution, but of reconnect. Not through Jenna, not through Marcus, but through Lily. I decided then, every Christmas moving forward, she'd get something directly from me. Not passed through her parents, not delivered in silence, but handed to her with history attached. She deserved to know where she came from, not just in blood, but in the backbone. I pulled out an old ammo box I'd kept since Germany. Empty, clean, sturdy. I filled it with items, my field compass, a letter Maria wrote to Jenna before her first day of school, a laminated photo of me in uniform from 1987, and Lily's drawing. This wasn't a gift. It was a time capsule of truth. I'd give it to her when the time was right. Because when girls like Lily grow up, they deserve more than stories filtered through bitterness. They deserve the full map. He arrived just after dusk. Didn't call, didn't text, just pulled into my driveway like nothing had ever burned between us. The porch light caught the frost on his windshield. His coat collar was turned up against the wind. And for the first time in a long time, he didn't look polished. He looked unguarded, no tie, no designer watch, no cologne cloud announcing his presence 2 seconds early. Just Marcus, empty-handed, empty-eyed. That's the most dangerous kind. I opened the door before he could knock. He stood there stiffly, as if even his posture couldn't decide whether this was an apology or a performance. "Dennis," he said, barely above a whisper. "Can I come in?" I didn't answer, just stepped aside. He passed me with hesitation, the first time he'd ever crossed my threshold without entitlement in his stride. And I couldn't help but notice the difference. I remember the first time he came here, 15 years ago, the first holiday he spent with Jenna. He wore confidence like cologne, smiled like he'd practiced it in the mirror, and looked around my modest home like it was a project he could flip. That day, Maria served him cinnamon coffee cake on our chip plates, and Marcus laughed too loudly at stories he didn't find funny. Maria watched him carefully. Later that night, she told me, "There's ambition in that one, not the dangerous kind, the quiet kind. He'll trade respect for image if no one teaches him better." I didn't listen. Maybe I should have. Now he stood in the same kitchen, eyes flicking to the same mantel where Maria's photo still stood. But this time, Marcus didn't comment on the wallpaper. He didn't straighten a coaster. He didn't smile. We sat opposite each other at the kitchen table. He stared at his hands for a while. I let him. Finally, he spoke. I wanted to look you in the eye. Why? To say I'm sorry. I didn't react. I was wrong about you, he continued. About a lot of things. Still, I said nothing. He tried again. I let pride and appearances get in the way of decency. I thought control was the same thing as respect, and I confused silence for agreement. That one landed. I gave him a slight nod. Progress, maybe. He shifted in his seat. I came here thinking maybe you'd want to say something, too. I already did, I said. At your Christmas dinner. That wasn't a conversation. No, I agreed. It was a reckoning. The room went still. He sat with that, let it sink in. Good. Then, do you hate me? I met his eyes. No, but I don't trust you. And I don't welcome you. His jaw tensed. The control slipped for a second, but he caught it. I deserve that, he said. You deserve truth, I replied. And the truth is, you don't get to show up after the damage and ask for redemption without rebuilding trust brick by brick. His throat bobbed. I know. But he didn't leave. Not yet. Instead, he glanced down at the table like there was something beneath it he hadn't quite decided to show. I was hoping maybe we could talk about Lily. That was his angle. I saw it now. It wasn't a visit. It was a pivot. He wasn't here for me, he was here to protect his remaining access through the only innocent piece of this mess. I kept my face still. Lily's welcome here anytime. I meant maybe you and I could coordinate, keep things consistent for her. You mean you want to dictate how I grandparent? His lips pressed thin. I just think it's important for her to understand unity. Unity? I said. You spent 5 years painting me out of the family portrait. Now you want me to color inside your lines. His face flushed. You don't have to be cruel. I'm not, I said calmly. Cruel would have been silence. This is just clarity. A long beat passed. Then he stood. I'm moving back to Seattle, he said. Taking some time. Resetting. I didn't ask who that reset was for, him or the image of himself he was trying to salvage. He stepped toward the door, then turned back, one hand on the knob. One day, you'll see I was trying my best. I looked at him, he measured him. Not to hurt, just to weigh. I hope that comforts you. He nodded once, like that answer had closed something inside him. Then he left. No door slam, no lingering cologne, just absence. The honest kind. I didn't move for a few minutes. Then I walked to the mantel, straightened the picture of Maria, ran my thumb along the edge of the frame. I handled it, I whispered to her. You'd have done it quieter, I know, but I handled it. I poured a cup of coffee, sat by the window, and thought about something Maria once told me years ago, when Jenna was a teenager and Marcus was just a smile in a photo frame. Some people walk into your life holding gifts. Others walk in holding blueprints for what they want to build using your foundation. I didn't understand that at the time. Now I did. Marcus never came to join the family. He came to curate it. And when the parts didn't match the design, he tried to sand down the edges, quietly remove the ones that didn't shine. I was never going to fit into his model, so he excluded me until the model cracked, especially when his own secrets started leaking. The truth is, this wasn't closure. It was an extraction, a surgical removal of a false bond. No stitches, just air and honesty, and a house that finally stopped echoing with the question, what did I do wrong? I cleaned the table, washed the cups, and stood in the kitchen Maria once loved, the kitchen Marcus once critiqued. This tile's a bit outdated, he said on his first visit. You could probably get a loan to redo it. That same tile now caught the firelight from the stove like polished memory. I smiled at it. It may not have impressed Marcus, but it had never betrayed me. I walked into the law office at 9:03 a.m. No appointment, no ceremony, just a file folder in one hand and a thermos of coffee in the other. Susan Baxter had been my attorney for 15 years. She handled our wills when Maria was first diagnosed. She's the kind of woman who doesn't waste time with small talk unless it has legal consequences. Dennis Carlisle, she said as I entered. Either someone's suing you or you're finally updating your living trust. I gave her a nod and dropped the folder onto her desk. Both, I said. She flipped it open. Inside, every document I'd been assembling for the past 6 weeks. Mortgage statements, transfer records, handwritten notes, photos, screenshots, and the twist, the full dossier on Marcus's financial irregularities, now backed by sworn affidavits from 2 former associates I'd tracked down through my network. She read in silence, eyebrows lifting slightly. I thought this might be about your daughter, she said. It is. And the son-in-law. I gave a dry smile. He's already lost the war. I'm just locking the gates now. We got to work. Within an hour, Susan had updated my will to remove Jenna and Marcus as contingent beneficiaries, established a custodial Roth IRA in Lily's name, funded with a small but growing investment, drafted a legally binding letter affirming that all financial support provided to Jenna and Marcus was voluntary, non-recurring, and not contractual obligated. Added a clause to my estate, any attempt to contest it would result in complete forfeiture of all listed inheritance. What about the house? She asked, glancing at a photo I'd clipped from Zillow, their current home now listed as is. I shook my head. They'll lose it. And I'm not lifting a finger. At 11:20 a.m., just as we were wrapping up, Susan tilted her laptop toward me. You should see this. On the screen was a copy of a public filing, bank records attached to a newly opened custodial account in Lily's name. The trustee, Jenna Carlisle. I stared at the screen for a long time, then leaned back slowly. When? I asked. 3 days ago. Amount, $1,500. Not much, but clean, legitimate. I said nothing. Susan looked at me, arms folded. You know what that is, right? A signal, I said. She nodded. A small one, but real. I didn't know what to feel, not pride, not forgiveness, just pause. For once, Jenna wasn't reacting. She was initiating, not to impress me, not to win me back, but because maybe, just maybe, something had finally cracked through the varnish of her adulthood. That afternoon, I drove to the edge of town, not to see her, just to park. A grocery store lot, neutral ground. From the cab of my truck, I watched the street and thought of everything she didn't know, that I'd already changed my will, that I'd redirected her legacy into Lily's future, that I was no longer the man waiting to be invited to dinner. I was the man building a legacy in silence. I remembered a conversation I had with Maria when Jenna was 12. She'd flunked a math test, lied about it, then tried to blame the teacher. She looked at me across our kitchen table and said, "One day, your daughter will learn that the truth doesn't need permission. It just needs patience." I hadn't understood it then. Now I did. At sunset, I drove back home. No calls, no stops, just me and the feeling that this war, long cold and quiet, was nearly over. Not because they surrendered, but because I stopped showing up for a battle that wasn't mine to fight anymore. That night, I lit a fire, sat with Lily's latest letter beside me, and looked through the folder one last time, not to add to it, not to weaponize it, just to honor the facts. Because when your life has been rewritten by others for long enough, your facts become your fortress. And for the first time in years, I felt untouchable, not because I'd won, but because I'd finally let go of needing to. It was still dark when I woke. I hadn't set an alarm, but my body knew. December 25th, my first Christmas morning in 29 years spent alone. The wood stove had gone cold. The silence stretched thick across the living room, no grandchild's footsteps thumping overhead, no kitchen radio humming Bing Crosby. Just frost on the windows and the hum of breath in a house finally still. I sat up slowly, no rush. The day would come either way. By 6:45, I'd lit a fire, brewed black coffee in the dented percolator, and stepped out onto the porch. Snow had fallen overnight, 3 inches, maybe 4, laid across the drive like a blank page. No tire tracks, no footprints. I thought of Maria, of how she used to set a single candle in the front window every Christmas morning. So if anyone's lost, she'd whisper, they know there's still a home lit for them. I hadn't lit that candle in years. But that morning, I did. At 8:12 a.m., a car pulled into the drive, a rented sedan, sliding slightly as it stopped. The door opened, and out stepped Lily, alone, wearing a too big winter coat and a knit hat that barely covered her ears. She held something wrapped in newspaper, both hands, like it was fragile, sacred even. I stepped off the porch as she came closer. No words at first, just a long, frozen look between 2 generations who'd both been left outside in different ways. Mom dropped me off at a diner near the turnpike, Lily said finally. Said they were headed to church. I told her I'd be fine. I nodded. You hungry? Always. We sat at the table, 2 plates, 2 mugs. She didn't talk much while she ate, just shoveled in scrambled eggs like it was her first real meal in a week. Maybe it was. Then she slid the wrapped object across the table. I found this in Grandma's closet, she said, behind the shoe boxes. I peeled back the paper slowly. Inside was a small wooden shadow box, handmade. My old dog tags, Maria's rosary, a yellowed photo of Jenna as a girl in a little red wagon, and beneath it, folded carefully, a note. For the day she remembers who she is. My breath caught. It wasn't addressed to anyone, but I knew. Lily stared at the box like it was an answer to a question she hadn't even known to ask. She used to tell me stories about you, she said, about the medals, the missions, but also the Christmases, the pancakes, the way you'd carry me on your shoulders like I was made of feathers. I didn't speak. Couldn't, not for a moment. Lily looked down, then said quietly, I think I remember. I was 4. It was snowing, and you carried me to the truck when I fell asleep on the couch. You were heavy, I said, voice breaking. But I never minded. She looked up. And what she said next, I'll carry to my last day, I don't want to forget. So, can I stay here a while? Just till school starts again. I nodded, not too fast. Just enough. Of course, I said. This is your home, too. She smiled, crooked, nervous, but it was there. I know it's not like their place, I added, gesturing to the peeling wallpaper, the cracked tile. Lily looked around and shrugged. It's better, she said. It's real. That afternoon, we took a walk through the snow-covered trail behind the house. No gifts, no music, just the sound of boots crunching on frost, and a girl slowly remembering that love doesn't always raise its voice. When we came back, I lit the stove again, and Lily, without being asked, chopped kindling. That night, as she dozed on the couch beside the fire, I opened the folder one last time, the paper trail, the war file, the proof. Then I placed it in the fireplace, watched it burn slow and silent. Not because I forgave Jenna, not because I forgot, but because I didn't need to carry it anymore. Lily stirred in her sleep. I covered her with a blanket and whispered as the flames danced, "Welcome home, soldier." If you've ever been excluded, underestimated, or erased, let this be a reminder: justice doesn't always roar. Sometimes it walks quietly back into its home, lights a candle in the window, and waits for the right soul to return. If you like this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your impressions of this story in the comments.